Welcome back. Last time we talked about curiosity as a posture and what it means to stay curious without collapsing. Today, I want to bring that closer because curiosity doesn't begin with ideas. It doesn't begin with theology, debates, or big questions about faith. It begins with attention to what's happening inside. And for a lot of us, that's actually harder than it sounds. Not because we're incapable, but because many of us learned early that noticing what's happening inside isn't neutral. It feels risky. So today we're going to explore what it means to practice curiosity of the inner life without immediately fixing, resolving, or spiritualizing what we notice. We're going to talk about paying attention before interpretation and why that matters, both clinically and spiritually. Let's begin. Here's what I'm noticing. A lot of us have learned to move very quickly from feeling something to fixing it. We don't even realize we're doing it. Something uncomfortable surfaces, and before we've fully felt it, we're already explaining it, spiritualizing it, problem solving our way out of it, or shoving it in a corner and detaching the feeling entirely. Maybe it looks like this. You feel irritation rising, and immediately you think, I shouldn't feel this way. Or you notice anxiety, and before you've even named it, you're telling yourself, just pray about it, or I need to have more faith. Or you feel sadness and you rush to figure out why so you can make it make sense and maybe make it stop. Or maybe you don't even get that far. Maybe you just go numb, disconnect, shove it down and keep moving. And listen, I'm not saying prayer is wrong. I'm not saying understanding is bad. But what I am saying is this. We've been trained to interpret before we notice, to fix before we feel. And when that becomes our default, we lose something important. We lose presence. Because here's what happens when we skip noticing. We never actually learn what our body is trying to tell us. We never get curious about why that irritation showed up or what that anxiety might be signaling or what's underneath the sadness. We just manage it, override it, explain it away, or disconnect from it entirely. And that might keep us functional for a while, but it doesn't keep us awake. So, the question episode 2 is built around is this. What happens if I notice what's happening in me without immediately correcting it? What if, just for a moment, I let myself pay attention before I try to fix? That's micro curiosity. And it's where faith and embodiment actually begin to integrate. So, what is micro curiosity? What does it actually mean to pay attention to the inner life without fixing? Micro curiosity is noticing what's happening inside before you assign it meaning. It's paying attention to sensations in your body, like tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, restlessness in your legs. It's emotional shifts like irritation that shows up out of nowhere, sadness that surfaces when you weren't expecting it, or anxiety that doesn't seem to have a clear trigger. It's automatic stories like the narrative your brain tells you about what's happening. I'm too much. I'm not enough. Something's wrong with me. Or it's urges to act or explain, like the impulse to fix it, numb it, pray it away, or justify why you're feeling what you're feeling. And here's what micro curiosity isn't. It's not indulging every feeling. It's not spiraling into self-absorption. It's not making everything about you. And it's definitely not a moral evaluation. Noticing irritation doesn't mean you're unspiritual. Noticing anxiety doesn't mean you lack faith. Noticing grief doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means you're paying attention. Curiosity of the inner life isn't asking, what's wrong with me? It's asking, what's happening right now? And that's a completely different question because what's wrong with me assumes judgment. It assumes something needs to be fixed, corrected, or explained away. But what's happening right now assumes information. It assumes your body is communicating something, and maybe, just maybe, it's worth listening to before you decide what to do with it. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're sitting in traffic and you notice your jaw is clenched. Your shoulders are tight. There's irritation rising in your chest. The fixing response would sound like, why am I so impatient? I shouldn't let this bother me. I need to be more grateful. Other people have it worse. And maybe you take a deep breath, say a quick prayer, and try to calm yourself down, which, to be clear, isn't wrong. But it also skips over something. The curious response would sound like, my body's really activated right now. My jaw is clenched. I notice there's tension in my shoulders. I feel irritation. I wonder what that's about. And then you just stay there for a second. You don't fix it. You don't judge yourself for feeling that way. You don't spiritualize it. You don't explain it away. You just notice. And here's what's interesting. When you stay curious, even for just a moment, you might notice something else. Maybe underneath the irritation, there's anxiety about being late. Or maybe there's grief because you're on your way to do something hard and your body already knows it. Or maybe, honestly, you're just tired and your nervous system doesn't have the capacity right now to hold one more thing calmly. That's all information. Not something to fix, not something to judge, just information. And when you have information, you can respond with wisdom instead of just reacting with urgency. That's what micro curiosity makes possible. Not overthinking, not navel gazing, just presence to what's actually happening inside so you can make choices from a grounded place instead of from override or disconnection. So if noticing is just information, if it's not indulgent or self-absorbed or unspiritual, then why does it feel so hard for so many of us? Why does paying attention to what's happening inside sometimes feel risky or even dangerous? I think it's because for a lot of us, noticing wasn't safe. We learned early in our families or churches or relationships that paying attention to what we felt could cost us something. Maybe it cost us belonging. Maybe it cost us approval. Maybe it cost us safety. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotions were too much or not allowed, or only certain emotions were acceptable. Maybe anger was punished. Maybe sadness was weak. Maybe fear meant you didn't trust God enough. So you learned to override, to disconnect, to explain away what you felt before anyone else noticed it or before it got you in trouble. Or maybe you grew up in a faith environment where noticing discomfort or questioning something or admitting struggle felt like a failure of faith. Like if you were really walking with God, you wouldn't feel anxious. You wouldn't feel doubt. You wouldn't feel frustrated or sad or confused. So noticing became dangerous because it threatened the image you were supposed to maintain or the certainty you were supposed to have. And here's what happens in those environments, whether we realize it or not. Our nervous system learns that attention equals threat. Not intellectually, we don't decide that consciously. But our body learns that noticing what's happening inside leads to consequence. So it adapts, it protects. And the protection looks like override, disconnect, fix, explain, numb. And those strategies, they worked. They kept us safe in environments where noticing wasn't safe. They helped us survive. But here's the thing about survival strategies. They don't know when the threat is over. So even now, even in environments where it is safe to notice, where God isn't threatened by our honesty, where curiosity won't cost us belonging, our body might still be responding like it's dangerous. That's not a moral failure. That's not weak faith. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's just how nervous systems work. They remember and they protect, even when the original threat is gone. So when I talk about paying attention without fixing, I'm not just talking about a spiritual practice. I'm talking about creating the internal conditions, the relational conditions, the nervous system conditions where noticing becomes safe again, where you can feel irritation without assuming something's wrong with you, where you can notice anxiety without needing to immediately pray it away or fix it, where you can sit with sadness without collapsing or spiritualizing or disconnecting. Because here's what I know. Noticing is information. And when we have information, we can respond with wisdom instead of just reacting from protection. That's grounded presence. And that's how regulation begins. So, where does faith fit into all of this? Because I think for some of us, this conversation might be stirring up a quiet concern. If I pay too much attention to what I'm feeling, am I being self-focused? Am I losing sight of God? And I want to say this as clearly as I can. God is not threatened by your inner life. God already knows what's happening inside you. The question isn't whether God can handle your honesty. The question is whether you can. Noticing what you feel doesn't separate you from God. Pretending does. Performing does. Going through the motions while ignoring what's actually true inside, that's what creates distance. The Psalms are full of this kind of honesty. Lament, anger, confusion, and grief. How long, O Lord? And why have you forsaken me? And my soul is downcast within me. These aren't tidy prayers. They're not polished or sanitized. They're honest. And God didn't edit them out of scripture. He included them because honesty, even painful honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is part of relationship with Him. Jesus asked people, "What do you want?" or "What are you seeking?" Not because He didn't know, but because they needed to know. They needed to notice. They needed to pay attention to what was actually happening inside them before they could receive what He had to offer. Paying attention to your inner life isn't self-absorption. It's self-awareness. And self-awareness, grounded in relationship with God, is part of how we grow, part of how we heal, part of how we become more present and more honest, more whole. God made you with a body, with emotions, with a nervous system that communicates through sensation and feeling. He didn't make you that way by accident. And honoring that design, paying attention to what your body is telling you, isn't less spiritual. It's stewarding what God entrusted to you. It's recognizing that you are body, soul, and spirit, integrated and interconnected. And all of it matters to God. So when you pause to notice tension in your shoulders, or sadness in your chest, or irritation rising, you're not turning away from God. You're turning toward the fullness of how He made you. And that's an act of trust, not in your own ability to fix yourself, but in God's care for every part of you, including the parts that feel uncomfortable, unresolved, or confusing. So, what does that actually look like in ordinary life? How do you practice paying attention without fixing? I want to offer you something small, something you can try if it feels right. No journaling required, no right way to do it, no expectation that it has to look a certain way. This week, pick one moment when you feel something shift inside. Maybe it's irritation. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's sadness or restlessness or fatigue. Instead of immediately moving to fix it or explain it or push it aside, pause for just 5 seconds. And in those 5 seconds, get curious about where you feel it. Is it tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest or throat, a knot in your stomach, restlessness in your legs, a heaviness? You're not trying to make it go away. You're just locating it. Notice where it lives in your body. And if you want, you can quietly name it. There's tightness in my chest. My shoulders are holding tension. I feel heaviness here. And that's it. That's the whole practice. You don't have to pray about it unless that feels natural. You don't have to figure out why unless curiosity naturally shows up. You just notice where, and then you keep moving through your day. And here's what I want you to know. If you try this and it feels uncomfortable, that's okay. That's actually normal. Remember, many of us learned that noticing isn't safe. So your nervous system might resist at first. It might want to fix or explain or disconnect. That's not failure. That's just your body doing what it learned to do. The practice isn't about getting it right. It's about creating space, little by little, where noticing becomes a little bit safer, where you can start to trust that paying attention won't collapse you. That's all. Nothing more complicated than that. Over the next few weeks, we'll keep building on this. We'll talk about what curiosity looks like in relationships, in the systems we live inside, in the places we've learned to go along without noticing. But for now, this is enough. Paying attention without fixing. Noticing without needing to resolve. Because here's what I want you to remember. God isn't afraid of what you notice. God isn't threatened by your inner life or your questions or the fact that some things feel uncomfortable and unresolved. Certainty is not the same as trust. You can notice tension, sadness, anxiety, confusion, and still be walking with God. You can pay attention to what's happening inside and still be faithful. Honesty doesn't separate you from God. Pretending does. What God invites us into again and again is presence. Actual presence. Not performance, not pretending, not going along. And that starts with paying attention to what's true, even when it's small, even when it's uncomfortable. Before you go, just notice what stayed with you. Not what you agreed with, not what you understood, what lingered. You don't have to resolve it, just notice it. That's the practice. For now, just come and see.